Hi, my name is Hope, and I want to tell you an amazing thing. Once I got the transfusion of a millionaire's blood, and after that, my family suddenly became rich. Don't believe me? Well, then you need to listen to my story. It all started when I had an accident after some idiot exceeded the speed limit and hit me right at a crosswalk. This was also partially my fault because I was looking at my phone screen and did not notice anything around me. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of blood, and that's why an urgent transfusion was required. I was very lucky because a suitable donor's blood was quickly found, and I had a rare type. My parents found out who the donor was, and he turned out to be a millionaire. Andrew Stanford, the owner of the largest shipyard in the state where luxury yachts were made. We sent him an email expressing our gratitude. Of course, later I was bragging to my friends that the blood of a billionaire was running through my veins and that I would soon become rich because of this, but it was just a joke. However, after some time, I really started believing that blood had mystical properties. While walking my dog Mindy in the park, I suddenly noticed that it was carrying something in its teeth. I was going to scold my dog for picking up different rubbish, but then I noticed a purse in its mouth. I opened it and looked for a driver's license or other information about the owner, but didn't find anything. However, there was money inside it, namely $3,000. After seeing such a sum, I got dizzy. It was a real treasure because even when I was working part-time in a cafe, I did not receive such a sum for all the time of my whole employment. I didn't want to part with the money, but I couldn't go against my conscience and posted an advertisement on the internet about finding a purse. But the owner never responded, so I kept the money for myself. Then fate surprised me more and more. On one of my working days in the cafe, I was cleaning the tables as usual. Guests that I had been serving most of the evening left, and I was warmly picking up the tip box. I did not expect to find anything there, but fortunately my expectations were not met. There was $2,000 inside. Until that day, I had never been given such a generous tip. At that moment, for the first time, I thought about the power of millionaire's blood. What if this wasn't a joke? At home, after reading the mythology of different nations, I learned that blood contains the energy of its owner. Because of the impressions that I got after reading the book, I dreamt all night about how I was cruising around the sea on a gorgeous, huge yacht. And then immediately after catching a private helicopter, I was flying to school where everyone was gladly welcoming me. Over the next few days, the cafe customers were constantly giving me good tips. I had no doubt that the power of the blood helped me, and because of this, I felt incredibly lucky and happy, but these tips couldn't be compared to the event that greatly impressed me. At the end of the month, my boss invited me to his office. Out of fear, I wanted to run away from the cafe and never return there because a couple of days before, I broke a teapot and 2 cups. I was sure that I would now be heavily fined or fired, but the boss unexpectedly praised me for my good work and gave me a big bonus. It was then that I was convinced that I would soon probably become very rich. I rushed home and started telling my parents about my gift that I acquired. I was choking on my words, but was sure that they would be excited to hear such news. However, my mother suddenly started laughing merrily, and my father just smiled broadly and said that I had a rich imagination. If I were a rocket out of anger, I could have flown to Mars faster than Elon Musk. But my irritation quickly disappeared because I had a backup plan. I immediately rushed to the nearest store and bought a couple of lottery tickets there. The next day, early in the morning, I sat down to watch the draw, hoping that fortune would smile upon me. You might find it hard to believe in this, but both tickets turned out to be winning tickets. I won a whopping $5,000. My parents still had a hard time believing in my gift, but I wasn't very upset about this. Out of joy that overwhelmed me, I ordered myself some expensive clothes that very day because the future millionaire needed to wear only designer clothes. When I was hanging out with my friends, I no longer thought about the money spent in cafes or shops because soon, thanks to the transfused blood of a billionaire, I was definitely going to get rich. I sincerely believed in the theory, and then one day it was confirmed again when money was transferred to my card from an unknown person. After seeing the amount, I almost fainted. I received a whopping $10,000. I cannot wait to spend it. That very day, my parents and I went to the supermarket. We didn't deny ourselves anything and took what we had wanted to try for a long time. When we were already near the cash register, and suddenly there was a mess. The cashier looked at us and the music started playing and confetti began falling down. As it turned out, I was their 100,000th customer. Out of excitement and shock, my parents and I froze and could not even move. The supermarket administrator solemnly handed me a check for $50,000. After this incident, my parents finally believed in my theory. They said I needed to make the most of my gift. We invested half the money I accumulated in stocks of some companies, and another third was spent on lottery tickets because we had no doubt that we would win. Also, my parents and I decided to go on vacation and spend the rest of the money there. When we arrived at the destination, we were surrounded by an azure beach and palm trees. Luxurious yachts were sailing far away. And in my mind, I was choosing one of them because soon I was going to be able to afford a lot. To be honest, the millionaire's power let me down a little because someone stole $100 from me on the beach. But I did not pay attention to it because at that moment, I found the amount insignificant. When there was only one day left until the lottery draw, I lay on the beach and again started dreaming of a luxurious life. Because of my fantasies, I did not notice that people were playing volleyball nearby. I realized this only when the ball hit my nose. My nose remained intact, but I still started bleeding. Oh no, I didn't care about the pain because there was a more serious problem. The precious blood of the millionaire was leaking out of me. Throwing my head back, I rushed to the hotel, and because of being in a hurry, I stumbled and hurt my foot so that it started bleeding. What a failure! My parents comforted me, saying that I would not lose my gift. But in the morning, no one had the same opinion since none of our lottery tickets turned out to be winners. It was a real failure. Our only hope was the stocks, but even then, an unpleasant surprise awaited us. We hardly managed to recoup them and had the power of Billionaire left me because of this small amount of bleeding? I was restless and mad about the fact that I could not save such a unique gift. But then all the mysticism in my story began to disappear before our eyes. I received an email from the bank asking me to return the $10,000 that had been sent to my account. Some person just mixed up the numbers and because of this, transferred the money to the wrong account, and then in the cafe, opened a book of complaints and suggestions just out of curiosity. There, I saw a lot of praise that was probably addressed to me. They were written by guests who gave me tips. So that's what the point was. They just liked the way I worked, and my boss gave me a bonus just because of the feedback, and the billionaire's blood had nothing to do with it. After that, I suddenly felt sad because I realized what happened to me was just a matter of luck, not magic in which I believed. But the sadness disappeared right away because I realized an important thing. Even without the power of the billionaire, thanks to my hard work and, of course, luck, I was able to make good money, and this meant that I could continue to strive for a better life without any mysticism. After that happened, we no longer did such reckless things as those sales and the lottery tickets. And my family affairs improved noticeably. I began to work hard and receive generous tips almost every night. And as a result, Dad in turn became well-versed with the stock exchange system, and this helped us earn good money. We no longer hoped for luck, but tried to receive decent income on our own. Where would you spend such a huge amount of money? Give your answers in the comments, click on the thumbs up button below the video, and don't forget to share it with your friends. Hey guys, my name is Tiffany, and until recently, I didn't go to school at all. If you think it's cool, you're wrong. Believe me, sitting at a desk and learning something new is not as scary as living and not really knowing anything. And now you will understand why. No one in my family ever went to school. My grandparents believe that it is possible to live normally without education if you work. My parents thought the same, and they instilled this idea in me. We have our own large farm, and we have been working on it all the time. In my early childhood, my mother taught me to count and write, but we were doing housework mostly. By the time I was 10, I was a good cook, and I could manage all of our livestock and help out in the garden. Because of this, I did not know how to write or count properly, so I got into unpleasant situations. For example, when I went to the grocery store, I could not count the money my parents gave me correctly. As a result, I gave the cashier half the amount required. However, another situation put me in a real stupor. Once I came to my friend's house for a party when there were many strangers. At first, it was a lot of fun. We were dancing, laughing, and fooling around. But then the party's pace slowed down noticeably. Everyone was tired and they turned off the music to sit quietly and chat. They started discussing various theories that I didn't understand. I felt like I was in the midst of a group of amusing scientists who spoke Latin. In the end, I just nodded back and shrugged my shoulders thoughtfully. At first, I managed not to stand out in any way, and when I nodded again, not really understanding what it was about, everyone suddenly fell silent and stared at me. It turned out that I agreed that our planet was not round but flat. I tried not to show panic, but immediately began to blush. Fortunately, I managed to get out of this stupid situation. It was all too stuffy in there, and I felt so bad that I couldn't think straight. They opened the window understandingly, and I tried to avoid smart questions from then on. Since then, I've decided that I just need to go to school. I don't want to suffer because of my stupidity anymore. I spent a long time trying to persuade my parents to send me to school. They, of course, did not see any sense in this because they believed that only labor could feed a person, but in the end, they agreed. When I was taking the entrance test, I ran into a terrible problem. I didn't know anything at all. The questions were for 8th grade pupils, but I managed to read them with great difficulty, and it was generally tough to understand these tasks. In the end, I was still accepted to the school, but to the 1st grade. I was insanely ashamed of this because I was 14 years old and I had to study among young children. But that's not the worst thing that could have happened to me. The fact is that the 1st graders knew and could do more than me. Yes, I could make a cool cake or easily ride a horse, but it was difficult for me to put two numbers together and read a small paragraph in a book correctly. My classmates did it much faster than me, and I wanted to sink into the ground and burst into tears from such shame. Since I was in 1st grade, I didn't even want to talk to my friends. I thought they would laugh at me and not want to hang out with their stupid friend. I carefully avoided them and tried to keep out of their way. Every day I spent at school was a nightmare for me. From such a volume of knowledge, my head was splitting, and I was also very uncomfortable among children and teenagers. They talked about some of their own stuff. They discussed bloggers, filmed videos on their phones, and constantly hung out on social media. I didn't know anything about that, and I felt even more stupid. At some point, I wanted to leave school so as not to get upset anymore and devote my life to the farm. But, oddly enough, my parents began to discourage me from this idea. They said that they also wanted to study, but in night school. And recently, they began to experience difficulties in trading due to illiteracy, and this needed to be corrected. My parents finally started studying at our school. At first, I was incredibly happy about this, but then I began to notice the reaction of children and even young teachers. Many looked at us as if we were cavemen, and to be honest, I was not surprised by this. My parents sometimes even mispronounce words, and sometimes they cannot formulate a thought in their head at all. But that wasn't the worst of it. One day, 1st graders came up to me and offered to help me with my studies. At that moment, I almost flushed with anger. Of course I refused their offer, but it did not lead to anything good. I failed the control test miserably. I had to overcome my pride because I really needed help. They laughed at me a little, but then they started explaining the material to me. So one day, I narrowly escaped a real disaster. In class, we were asked to draw different animals, and I got a platypus. Then I was delighted because I thought that I needed to draw a duck with a big nose. I lived on a farm and I knew exactly what a duck looks like. I carefully drew the duck, thinking that it would be the best drawing in the class. I finished before everyone else and I showed my results to a classmate. However, instead of admiration, he chuckled softly and then explained to me what a platypus was. We laughed together at my drawing and he even helped me redraw it. My classmate told me a lot and even suggested good training sites, but I told them that I had no internet or even a phone. You should have seen their faces at that moment. They were as shocked as if they had seen a dinosaur. They assured me that now nothing could be done without the internet, and I surprised them by telling them the opposite, so we found a common language. I was no longer ashamed of my classmates helping me as my grades became much better. However, I faced another problem. My parents failed all the tests, which is why they were expelled. I expected to see the disappointment on their faces, but it was just the opposite. Trying not to laugh, they went out into the schoolyard. I demanded an explanation, and their response shocked me. They said that they were once again convinced that school was a useless place. According to them, here we are taught completely unnecessary things that will not help in life of an adult. They were happy that I was making progress in my studies, but they themselves had no intention of studying further. I began to convince them of the opposite, gave many arguments, but they remained unconvinced. I understood that in our time it is impossible to be so far from progress, and I wanted to convey this idea to my parents. And then I decided to take a desperate step. I bought a smartphone with internet access with my pocket money. When I brought it home, my father was both angry and scared. He thought our house was definitely under surveillance. Once he tried to get rid of the phone while I was sleeping, my father snuck into my room, grabbed it, and buried it in the backyard. I searched for the phone for a long time, not thinking that my parents could have hidden it somewhere. It seemed to me that they were even afraid to hold it in their hands. But having overheard the conversation of my parents, I realized where they had put the phone. After this incident, we had a serious conversation, and I just asked them to trust me. I showed them a lot of interesting videos, short documentaries, and even websites where there are many articles about farms. For some reason, I didn't think it would help in any way, but fortunately, I was wrong. My parents were delighted with the new information they received, and in the end, they spent the whole night on the internet learning something new, and the next day, Dad brought home a laptop. They realized that they did not know a lot, and they had a desire to develop. My parents decided to continue their studies remotely in order to get a certificate, and they were very ashamed that they did not send me to school before. I held no grudge against them. As they say, better late than never. Besides, thanks to the internet and a huge desire to learn, I was able to jump from first grade right to fourth. And this, believe me, is a huge progress for me. Now I could communicate normally with friends and no longer felt like a terrible dummy in comparison with them. In addition, they were great about the fact that I started going to school and supported me in every possible way. Would you like to never go to school? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to click on the thumbs up button under this video and share it with your friends.